Ladies and gentlemen, good evening to all of you. My name is Ubaida El-Mudallal. It's an honor for me to lead this seminar today, which speaks about the tragedy of the Gaza Strip after more than 15 years of siege, especially since it comes in difficult circumstances these days, where the world is living a serious pandemic, which called Corona pandemic, which has recently arrived in the Gaza Strip despite all the tragedy. The people of Gaza have lived under an Israeli-imposed blockade that severely limits travel, trade, and everyday life for more than 2 million residents. And the blockade was first imposed in 2006 and was tightened in 2007. The blockade effectively bans nearly all exports from Gaza, severely limits imports to Gaza, and close the Gaza border for exit by Gaza residents and interest by others. The impact of the blockade has been devastating. Today, Palestinians in Gaza don't have reliable access to clean water and electricity and many other services. Hospitals are under-resourced, schools have degraded, and the economy has been destroyed. And this special meeting observed the solidarity with the Gazanians in Palestine. In my honor and pleasure it's my honor and pleasure to welcome Mrs. Christine Thornberg, representative of the Ship to Gaza Foundation from Sweden, and Mrs. Anne Wright, member of the American Boats to Gaza and Gaza Freedom Flotilla from USA, and Mrs. Claude Liustic, President Platform of NGOs for Palestine from France. And on the other side, from Gaza Strip, Mr. Ahmed Abu Taima, Palestinian writer and activist, and Mr. Salah Abdel Atli, chairman of the International Commission to Support Palestinian Rights. First of all, I would like to start with Mrs. Thornberg. Mrs. Thornberg, how would you rate the European role towards ending the suffering of the population in Gaza Strip?
Well, as the siege is going on, I must say that we are not doing enough. And I think all countries in Europe and all countries around the world really have an obligation to put light onto the situation in Gaza. And we do need to do a lot more. I'm afraid, though, that the current situation in the world with the pandemic going on and also with the climate changes going on, we do have a challenge. But as I see it, also the situation in Gaza it concerns us all. So we do need to do a lot more, both in Europe and around the world. Thank you.
Okay, and do you think that the European Union is interested in alleviating the suffering of the people of Gaza, and is he convinced of that?
Do you mean the European Union?
Yes.
Yes. Well, you know, there is a delegation for the relations with Palestine in the Union. And I do think that the people who work in the delegation are serious about what they are doing. But still, they also have a hard time to be heard. So the union also needs to do a lot more. We have strong enemies against us.
Okay. Mrs. Right. What is the role of the European media in highlighting the suffering that Gaza is facing, and is the media towards the Israeli side?
Well, for the American media, we have a very, very difficult time telling the story of Palestinians, whether they're in Gaza or the West Bank. The US media is very focused on the preservation of the state of Israel. And with the new Biden administration having come in, I'm afraid we're not going to have a lot of difference between what the Trump administration did, which was terrible, terrible for Palestinians, and particularly for those in Gaza, where the US stopped its contribution to the UN Works and Relief Agency. That is one place, though, that the Biden administration has said they are going to reestablish the US contribution to the UN Works and Relief Agency. But President Biden, when he was a senator and when he was vice president, was very supportive of the state of Israel. So we have lots of work to do here in the United States to push this new administration to at least, you know, a balanced look at what's going on in Israel versus Palestine.
Do you think that the American politics could be changed in the next 4 years?
Well, I'm not too sure that it can be changed because, as I mentioned before, the President Biden has always been very supportive of the state of Israel. And the new Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, has already said that he agrees with what the Trump administration did in recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. The whole issue of illegal settlements is something that, of course, we'll be pushing hard on to stop the illegal settlements, but it's not looking promising. And despite the fact that we have now a Palestinian American who is in the Congress, yay, good. Her voice is not strong enough and is not amplified by enough members of the Congress that I think that we could really push hard. We as activists, of course, will continue to press members of Congress and the administration. But it's not looking positive, in my opinion.
What about the American society?
Well, that's where our work is in terms of trying to have community meetings to talk about the plight of Palestinians, about the abuse that they suffer from the state of Israel, the theft of lands, the imprisonment of the youth as well as adults, the lack of help to the people of Palestine from the occupying forces of Israel on the whole issue of health and COVID. So we have a long way to go. In just a minute, I'd like to show a PowerPoint presentation of ways that we are trying to educate our community, because that's really where our strong point is.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Leestek, through your work with NGOs and through your organization, how can European and Palestinian activists work together towards solving the Gaza Strip or Palestinian crisis, and will we see support campaign from the Gaza Strip, for the Gaza Strip?
Yes, but you know, for us, Palestine is one and indivisible. And so Gaza is one part of Palestine that we work on, obviously, but we also are really focused on the West Bank, on the issue of Jerusalem, prisoners, the refugees, of course. We have lots of partners in closely with them, and we exchange experiences and we exchange analysis, and we hope to build a real movement to support the rights of the Palestinians and their fight for their rights. So what we have in France is a pretty strong solidarity movement around two main bodies. One is the platform of NGOs for Palestine, and the other one is what we call the Palestine Collective, that is more like political parties, trade unions. And all together, or sometimes separately, we work at two levels to explain and convince our population that injustice is major in the case of Palestine, and to lobby the decision makers. We have made some impact on things like BDS, of course, the settlement products that have been not properly banned, but now have to be labeled as such in the European Union. And I think this is a common victory with other countries in Europe. For the case of Gaza, it's a bit more difficult because both the politicians and the media have an obvious bias that, you know, Gaza is a terrorist place and Hamas is a terrorist organization. It's still on the terrorist list of the European Union, even though we try to have the Union move on that. So, you know, whenever there's retaliation from Gaza after an attack by the occupation forces, what our media say is that Israel replied to an attack. You know, they reverse the situation completely. So we have a lot of difficulty making people understand what the real where the real responsibilities lie. And our politicians are not, shall I say, honest. They are completely in favor of Israel, for most of them on the political spectrum, because Israel is a partner, a much favored partner for both France and globally the European Union in terms of commerce, geopolitical interests. And so the alliances are so strong that the Palestinian plight disappears from the radars, you know. And so our work is really difficult. And together with our friends, Palestinian friends in Gaza and the West Bank, and also with some Israeli friends who are opposed to the occupation of the West Bank and the blockade on Gaza, we try to move things a bit around, but it is really difficult, particularly now that, I mean, the world is focusing on other issues and Palestine is not really high on the agenda anymore. And also because even Arab states are betraying Palestine. So it's really difficult to get people to follow us on this road, which is obvious for us, to justice and freedom. And this is to stop this illegal blockade. As you said, it's been going on for nearly 15 years. And before that, Gaza was in a very dire situation also. So like Kerstin and Anne, I would say we have still a lot of work to do and the road is long, but we are optimistic. We will win. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry, there was a problem with the connection. We're back now. Mr. Thornberg, I'll turn to you now. What is required of European civil society organizations and how can pressure be made on European politicians to take action to end this tragedy?
Well, I will start with the politicians and I'll give you an example, and that we are just now making a petition here in Sweden. When we have enough, or when people have had the possibility to sign the petition, we will send it to our foreign minister, Ann Linde. I'm afraid she's a friend of Israel, I'm afraid. She listens to us and she accepts our letters and she replies our letters, but it's always with, but you must also understand Israel. So we do have a lot of work to do with her. And I do think that, you know, trying to influence politicians is a very important way of working. So we have also taken contacts with the parliamentarians in the European Union and those who are working in the delegation for relations with Palestine. And I think that's quite a strong group. So I think that's a good group to work with, which I think is very, very important. Since in the Union, we do need to have a lot of influence. Sorry, I missed the first part of your question. well, with the media is also, of course, essential. We do have problems with publishing our articles. We do have some left media, left papers, and they do publish what we write. And this week there was a very good article about the COVID situation and the vaccine situation in Gaza, written by the chair of my organization, Ship to Gaza Sweden, also signed by the Organization for Solidarity with Palestine and for the Jews for Peace between Palestine and Israel. So we are three organizations working together. But we also have more NGOs in Sweden who are willing to work with us. So I think we must create networks to work. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you. Mrs. Lustig, what is the next plan through your organization or NGOs organizations? How could we help?
As you know, we are in a difficult situation because of the pandemic and because we can't move, we can't organize public events, we can't organize demonstrations or debates with our public. So we have a lot of difficulty just now to organize things. So what we do is we continue to inform and to lobby our decision makers. We continue to write, and as Kerstin said, we write to our members of parliament, we write to the government, though we know that they won't listen much. And we also work in the direction of the members, the French members of the European Parliament. And we have some very good allies there. And they've done a lot of work around the flotilla in 2011. We went to the Parliament and we pushed, and they pushed for positions to be taken by the Parliament. And the support was really interesting. So just now, we are in a sort of limbo, waiting to know exactly how we can move on to do things. And meanwhile, we are saying things, writing articles, lobbying the media. But as I said, their position, particularly around Gaza, is really very negative. And I mean, it is not negative, it is completely wrong. It is completely biased. And so it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of time. We're not seeing much progress just now, but again, we're optimistic that when this pandemic stops and we can resume our public work, things will have moved. We know that there is a lot of concern in France about the situation. A recent opinion poll showed that more than 70% of the French people are in favor of sanctions against the state of Israel for what it does to the Palestinians. We also know that a lot of people are deeply concerned with the situation in Gaza as such, but particularly in the time of the pandemic and with the blockade preventing medicine, vaccine, syringes, doctors, I mean, everything. This echoes, you know, the worries of a lot of people in this country. And we also have in the platform, we also have medical NGOs active on the ground, and they continue to be active in Gaza. We've got what we call Doctors Without Borders, of course, and Doctors of the World, Médecins du Monde, and they are active, and so they also give us information and background, you know, to develop our arguments. So we do what we can. We know that it's not as much as we should, I mean, as much as the situation requires, rather, but we continue. And as I said, in the meantime, we try to impose a discourse of justice in the population here.
Thank you. Yes, back to you, say, Mrs. Wright. We all know that USA is the biggest supporter of the Israeli occupation. Do you face any problem through your activities there?
Oh yes, we as supporters of Palestinian rights face a lot of problems. As I've mentioned before, you know, the administrations, whether it's Republican or Democratic, are always supporting the state of Israel in whatever it does. The U.S. government gives $3 billion for military equipment alone to the state of Israel, which is perfectly capable with its strong economy of purchasing anything it wants, but it's the U.S. gift to the state of Israel. The backlash to people who support Palestine is evident in several different ways. For example, if you're a student in a university and you dare to create Students for Justice in Palestine, immediately the Zionist lobby comes after you personally. And these young women and men who stand up bravely in college for Palestine find that whenever they graduate from college, they're on a list that the Zionists send out saying, don't hire this young person. You know, they're very, you know, they are dangers to the community. We have, I think it's 20 states in the United States that have passed state laws saying it is illegal to conduct any boycott, divestment, and sanctions activities in those states. Of course, organizations such as Palestine Legal and the Center for Constitutional Rights have been pushing back against the states and have been filing lawsuits so that ultimately the laws are declared unconstitutional. But in the meantime, there's a lot of individual trouble that particularly the students and faculty members have when all of a sudden they are called very poisonous names only for supporting the rights of Palestinians. For those of us that take the step of going on things like the Gaza flotilla to physically challenge the Israeli naval blockade of Gaza, when we return, oh my, the newspapers really go after us. And in fact, some Congress people have called for us to be jailed for our activities in supporting Palestinians.
Actually terrible. Okay. Mrs. Thornberg, what about you?
Sorry, I don't get the question.
Okay, through your work and activities.
Yeah, okay.
Palestine, yes. Do you face any problem?
Not really. No, I can't say we do. I think in this country we do well. Not like they have in the United States, but of course we do have people who are against our work. Yes, we do, and they are opposed a lot to what we are doing, and they don't realize that the Palestinians live in an apartheid situation. They don't acknowledge that. But I can't say that you are like you don't get hired or so you have the freedom to express your opinion. Yes.
That's nice. Mrs. Leostic, the last question. Do you plan to visit Gaza or Palestine in the next day, this year or next month or anyway?
Any time soon would be great, but I don't think this is going to happen. I was last in Gaza in 2013 on a mission of the platform, and where we met civil society and all our partners of the Palestinian NGOs and the people there. And just after we left, there was a coup in Egypt, and so the border was closed. And as for me, I'm banned from entering Israel, and so entering Palestine, and so there's absolutely no way that I can get to Gaza through Israel. You know, this is something we face, and I would say, like Anne, that we face a lot of difficulties here because we've got a very, very strong Zionist lobby in this country, and they fight as much as they can and viciously if they can, and they smear us as anti-Semitic, of course, and which means supporters of BDS, and as you know, Israel has banned all BDS supporters from entering. But this is something, on the other hand, which is quite interesting, because when you explain to people that you cannot get to your friends in Palestine, because you have to go through Israeli checkpoints, authorizations, soldiers, weapons, then it makes them understand a little bit what is going on. So I would like so much to get back to Palestine. I haven't been in a long time, because now I meet my Palestinian friends from the West Bank when they come out, which is very, very seldom nowadays. So I do hope to get back soon, but first let's get rid of the pandemic, then let's get rid of the occupation, which is the other pandemic for the Palestinians.
So I hope all the best for you, and that your dream could be real in the next time. Thank you. So we are close to end the first section of this seminar, and would like to thank you all for your participation, and hope that this tragedy could be ended as soon as we hope.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry, I had to leave.
Free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Thank you.
Palestinians in Gaza are still suffering from an Israeli blockade since more than 14 years. This inhumane blockade affected all the sides of the life of the people here in Gaza, the medical sector, the workers, the farmers, the unemployment. So the situation in Gaza became very difficult in the light of the Israeli blockade. This Israeli blockade is a kind of a collective punishment. It targeted the ordinary people, the elderly, the women, the children, the patient people. Imagine when the patient need urgent medical treatment, they should wait sometimes 6 or 7 months before they get the Israeli permit to go to the hospitals in Jerusalem or in the West Bank or the occupied Palestine. And in many times, in many cases, the Israeli authorities banned them from this permit. This means that the people in Gaza, the Palestinian people in Gaza, became deprived from their basic necessities, from the basic human rights that anyone around the world discuss about it, the freedom of the movement, the right to go to the hospitals for the patient, the right of the students to arrive to their universities. This is because of the Israeli blockade. Yeah, Israel claimed that this blockade targeted a political faction. But when we look at the reality, we know that Israel is lying. This blockade affected the ordinary people and all the sectors of the civil life here. The Palestinians in Gaza found them under this Israeli blockade, and this was not the only problem. The problem also was that the silence of the international community, this silence encouraged Israel to go in this direction and to practice more and more of the kinds of the collective punishment against the people in Gaza. So this silence means for Israel that you can do anything, and this international silence, more for the Palestinians, that more deaths, more suffering. Now, after about 14 years from the beginning of this blockade, we see whole generations that they grow up under this blockade, and they never left this limited place that called Gaza Strip. They never arrived to Jerusalem or Hebron or West Bank, that it's part of the same country. Even it's far, only about 1 hour from Gaza Strip. The people outside of Gaza, they never, they cannot arrive to Gaza Strip, travel to Gaza Strip, but with very limited situations that Israel give them permits for some journalists and some employees in the international unions and the international organizations. The Palestinians under this blockade find themselves that they are dying. They are dying slowly under this blockade. They are dying because of the lack of the medicine, the lack of the clean water, because they are deprived from their right to travel, their right to connect with the outside world. So we didn't find, unfortunately, our choices as Palestinians were very limited because we are the weak party, and we are the party that under occupation, under the Israeli violation. We found ourselves that we are very close to die slowly. So we decided here in Gaza Strip to scream. We decided to knock the door. And we saw this in the Great March of Return. The Great March of Return was an attempt to make our voices heard across the world, to say to the world that we are people here, we are under the siege, under the blockade, we are isolating from the connection with the outside world, the connection with the rest of Palestine, of our land. So we decided to protest peacefully, protest in popular, and again Israel killed us again. Israel first killed us when it occupied our land, when it made us refugees, when it made the Nakba. Then again it killed us when it imposed the inhumane blockade against us. Then it killed us again when we tried to knock the door, when we tried to scream. And Israel wanted to send a message to us that we, as Israel, we have the right to kill you, to impose the blockade on you, to occupy your land, but you as Palestinians, you don't the right to scream, you don't the right to protest, you don't have the right to say no.
So what role has the international community and the United Nations played towards the 2 million besieged?
We are very disappointed from the international community because its silence, and not only its their silence, but also their bias with Israel, their support for Israel politically and militarily and with economically. So the formal international community unfortunately decided to stand in the wrong side of the history, to be with the oppressor, to be with the party who practice the apartheid and practice the occupation with other people. Yeah, this is the formal international community and the international governments, especially the governments of the United States and the European Union. But we felt some hope with the supporters of the Palestinian rights, with the solidarity movement across the world. Yes, we appreciate the attempts of the international solidarity movement when many of them tried to come here to show their solidarity with us. Yes, their ability to arrive here, to arrive to Gaza, was very limited because of the Israeli limits. Israel banned hundreds of the international supporters from the arrival to Gaza Strip, and we also remember when the supporters and the activists tried to break the siege from the sea, the Turkish and the international activists, and Israel committed a new crime against them in 2010. It killed about more than 10 from them. So yes, we feel disappointed from the international complicity. In the same time, we feel that we appreciate deeply all the supporters around the world, across the world, who stand with us, who decided to stand in the right side of the history, and they showed their solidarity. Yes, the international solidarity movement, it didn't turn to a big and a strong movement that it can break this siege and make a difference and force the state of the Israeli apartheid to end this suffering and to end its violations against the Palestinian people. But at least we thank them because they give us the hope and because they made their moral role with the oppressed people here in Palestine.
Mr. Abdelhadi, can you give us a profile of the reality of the Gaza Strip more than 14 years after the blockade?
Gaza, big jail. Israeli occupation, he make siege about Gaza Strip before 14 years. He make this siege, and after he attacked Gaza 3 times ago. 3 war, killing many thousand people, many thousand people be injured, destroy many thousand house, destroying the building. He make war crime, don't care about what international law say, and humanity law, exactly Geneva Agreement, for Geneva Agreement, what he say, Israelis don't care about in that.
So excuse me for technical problem again. We'll solve the problem as soon.
Exactly, he can continue in the life minimum. He's he make permission for the people if he need to go outside in Gaza. More of the Palestinian, exactly in the sick person, he couldn't go outside in Gaza, in the West Bank, or hospital in Jordan or Egypt, because in the Israeli he making this siege. And the same 2 million Palestinian minimum lives in big jail in Gaza, and the same he more suffering because in this jail he make and attack Gaza 3 times ago. Gaza without electricity, more of the people under in the poverty line, more youth he under in the employment, all of the youth he don't found security food, 47% in the percent he lives about in the food and support in the UNRWA or another NGOs, international NGOs, give it in these people. All of the Palestinian, the economic, the water, farmer, fish person, all of them, all of the people, youth, children, women, all of them, he under in the siege, he more suffering and more have more problem, because in this siege he cut it in the development for in the Palestinian economic, the Palestinian humanity, and the Palestinian service, health service or education service, another service. We leave in the all of the Palestinian lives under in the occupation and under in the siege. That mean in the life more suffering and more problem in the economic, in the healthy, in everything. That's mean what the mean you lives under in the siege, Israeli siege, and that's mean what Gaza live in, what the people live in Gaza under in the siege. All the youth and the student Palestinian lives in Gaza, he have many problems. One problem about he couldn't pay the salary for education, good education in the university in Gaza, because most of the family it's under in the poverty line. And the same, if any, all of the youth, we have 1,600 person under in deployment. Most of them youth. He couldn't found a job because in the siege, under the siege, he cut it in the development about in the all of the economic in Gaza and the farmer, because in the Israeli occupation destroy many farmer. He make siege near in the farmer place, near in the beach, or the farmer place north in Gaza. And the same, we have a big problem about in the youth. He couldn't travel outside to continue in the education or to found many jobs. Most of the Palestinian student and youth, he couldn't go in the university outside in Gaza because in the border Rafah it's closed. All of the border in Gaza it's closed, and the Israelis don't give it him in the permission. The same we in the occupation control about in the material enter in Gaza. That's mean about in the all factor or all service he need in this material. It's if he couldn't found it, he stop it in the work. And the same in the occupation destroy 1,000 factor in Gaza or economic place. That's mean about more than employment. Now in the employment exactly in the youth, 17% all in the youth lives in Gaza. He couldn't found in the couldn't found job. And the same coming the frag between Fatah and Hamas, he make the same more challenges for in the youth to found economic or development or any job. And the same COVID-19, he coming more, he make more suffering about in the people, more suffering about in the worker, because many thousand worker he lose it in the job because in the economic under in the siege and under in the COVID-19 and under in the frag between Fatah and Hamas, and no reconciliation. Israelis don't care about what in the call in the international call he need to Israelis to stop it in the siege under in the Gaza. Israelis he don't care about in the international law, don't care about in all calling international calling or United Nations. What he say, that's mean more suffering for youth, more employment, more people exactly in the youth lives under in the poverty line.
So, Mr. Abutema, what message do you want to send to the Europeans in general and Palestinians in Europe in particular?
Our message to the Palestinians around the world, in Europe, in the United States, everywhere, and our message to all the people who believe in justice, believe in human rights, believe in dignity for everyone around the world, that we believe that we have one battle, not many battles. It's one battle here in Palestine. It's the same battle of everyone who believe in justice and believe in a world without racism, without apartheid, without occupation, without oppression. So it's our united battle to fight for freedom, to fight to end this Israeli apartheid, this Israeli occupation, this Israeli oppression. We cannot imagine that the world will become a safe place, peaceful place, without end the apartheid regimes everywhere, the regimes that violate the human rights and violate the and deprive the people from their freedom and from their dignity. So this is our moral responsibility in this world. Please let us stand in the right side of the history. Let us fight together. Let us raise the awareness around the world that it's unnormal that Israel continue its apartheid. Israel continues its occupation. We are now in the 21st century. It's inconceivable that there are regimes discriminate between the peoples according to their ethnicity, according to their religion, according to their color. This is unacceptable. Israel is still imprison millions of people between the walls and between the fences, not because anything but for one reason, that those people are, I mean we as Palestinians, that we are non-Jews. This is a clearly apartheid. This is a clearly in coordination with the democracy and the human rights and the international law. So we should make lobbies to push the governments in Europe to respect the international law. We should convey our voice for the governments. You should choose between the international law or the Israeli apartheid. What's your decision? The international law, the justice, or the Israeli apartheid? Israel is a real burden, a heavy burden against the creating the world without fences, without discrimination, without hatred. So please, I think I think one of the effective ways to fight for the freedom of Palestine and for the freedom of all the world, that the boycott against Israel, to push it to end its apartheid. Today, Israel use the money of the taxpayers around the world to buy more bullets, to buy more fences, to build more settlements based on the stolen Palestinian lands. So please boycott Israel. Boycott Israel, because this will help that Israel pay the price of its apartheid, pay the price of its discrimination, pay the price of the continuation of its occupation. Now, Israel make its deals with the world and can buy and can sell, so it doesn't feel that there is a serious justification to end its occupation. So anyone who buy the Israeli goods, who come to Israel, then he helped this state to kill more Palestinian children, to build more settlements on the stolen Palestinian lands. So we know that all of us dream that there is a world of justice, world without apartheid, world without hatred, world without occupation. How can we help to build this world? Simply, we can do this by boycotting Israel, by making lobbying, by pushing the parliament members and the governments that it's unacceptable, it's unmoral to choose Israeli apartheid rather than the international law. We should continue until the freedom is prevailed, until we get our freedom, until the world become more safe and more peaceful. And this will not be but one way to end the Israeli apartheid. And this is our common responsibility here in Palestine and in Europe and everywhere. We should send a strong message for Israel and for all the supporters of Israel that you should pay the price of your oppression and your apartheid.
Really, I ask myself and all of the Palestinian lives under the siege, ask himself how we continue in the life. Really, we under in the siege, under in the occupation authority. He don't care about in the international law. He make war crime. The economic in Palestinian more destroy. Israeli, he make punish about in the people. He don't care about what in the youth need or women or children. Everything, all of the Palestinian lives without electricity, without water, good water or healthy water. He under deployment, more suffering. Most of the children, he don't have food enough. All of this, that's mean about you live about in the massacre exactly, or lives under the suffering. You have challenges about everything. If you need gas, if you need electricity, water, job, everything, we don't found it. All of the people, youth, he thinking trafficking outside in the Palestinian, and we lose it more of them because he die in the beach, or he trafficking outside very difficult or very suffering travel. And that's mean about Gaza, what the United Nations say about in the report 2020, that mean about Gaza, he couldn't, you couldn't found any life in Gaza. But we in Gaza, we continue in the life. We struggle in the occupation. We believe about in the international community. He can support in the Palestinian to continue in the life and support for him to finish in the occupation and make end for in this siege. If we don't make this, that's mean more suffering about in the people, more suffering about in the civil person living under in Gaza. All of them, children, women, worker, sick person, he have more suffering about because in this siege. We ask in the international community and the European Union and all of the active for human rights or magazine to make photo or to make Zoom about in Gaza under in the siege, and asking all the Europe and the international community to make lobby about in the Israel to stop it in violation about in the human rights and finishing in this siege in Gaza.
So at the end of this section, I would like to thank our guests for their participation. Mrs. Christine Thornberg, a representative of the Ship of Gaza Foundation from Sweden, and Mrs. Ann Wright, member of the American Build to Gaza and the Gaza Freedom Flotilla from USA, and Mrs. Claude Leustic, President Platform of NGOs for Palestine from France, and also our guest from Gaza Strip, Mr. Salah Abdel Ati, Chairman of the International Commission to Support Palestinian Rights, and Mr. Ahmed Abu Taima, Palestinian writer and activist. And would like to thank everyone who follows us. Also, hope of another meeting as soon. Thank you. Bye.